Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of Teal Tinted Glasses. Tonight, there's obviously a whole lot to talk about. We got Erik Karlsson. I want to make sure that we go over a couple things really quickly first. Obviously, we had the pyramid thing we were going to do today. I'm going to push that to next week, and the reason for that is obviously this Erik Karlsson. It's going to be just a crap ton to decompress, and I want to let the pyramid thing kind of have its moment, just because I think it's going to be a fun conversation. Plus, it gives more time for you guys to help us out making a audience pyramid. So let's get down to business, obviously, because we don't want to waste too much time tonight talking about nothing when there's so much important stuff to talk about.
Like your hat.
Sorry?
Like your hat. That's the most important thing going on right now.
Absolutely. I said I'm going to start the show like this, but here's the truth of the matter, guys. I can't read the chat with it on because I don't have my glasses on and I don't feel like putting them on. And I also can't drink with this thing on, and it's kind of warm in here. So I'm going to take it off at some point, but I thought I'd start the show with it just because I paid probably too much money for it, although I'm going to wear it on Halloween, so it's going to be awesome. But really, my hat is dumb. Let's get down to business. Kevin Lacey, welcome to the show. Some opening thoughts before we throw it to Jerk.
You're going to like this one. We have a trade to announce. Dude, what the heck? So I was at work trying to do my business, and that gets texted to me, and I swear I did nothing for about 20 minutes except run around the office talking to anybody I could that the Sharks got Erik Karlsson. Oh my goodness. Hockey jerk.
So same kind of thing. I'm minding my own business, literally putting on my shoes to leave the house for the day, pull up my phone and see, oh, Karlsson is most likely going to the Sharks. And I'm like, okay, no, he's not. Like, we've heard this song and dance before, and then I'm in lecture and my phone, boom, Erik Karlsson to the Sharks. And I'm like, okay, for what? And then, it was a whole sequence of events like, oh God, it's Hurdle and Merkley. Oh, wait, it's Tierney and DeMello. Draft picks, prospects. Basically that was all running through my head. And then same thing as you, Kevin. I did nothing for probably 20 minutes. I was like, texting all my friends. A firestorm.
You didn't text me, jerk. You are a hockey jerk.
He is a hockey jerk.
You know what? I figured you would see my tweets since they are so important. As the future captain of the Montreal Canadiens, I demand respect.
Gotcha. Yeah, let's mute.
No, but yeah, right. All right. See y'all later. It was like, no, I'm with you, Kevin, though. It was just like a solid 20 minutes of just sitting there like, what the hell just happened?
I haven't been this like crazy over a Sharks trade since Teemu Solani. Like, seriously,
okay.
That's how big this was to me. Ian?
It's Joe Thornton to me. I mean, like, that was to me, this is even better than the Joe Thornton trade. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Joe Thornton's first ballot Hall of Famer, great player, but even in his prime, was he top 3 in his position? I can't say that with I love Joe Thornton, but top 3 in his position, maybe not.
Yuri won MVP just 1 year.
Yeah, maybe. But whereas Erik Karlsson, I mean, I would argue he's the best defenseman in the league. But I would hear no less than top 3. I think if you say he's under top 3, we're fighting at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably winning.
Oh man, dude. So let's break it down, basically, guys. Because like we were gonna do our prospect pyramids.
Oh, I know.
I mean, I made it all up. I posted it on my Twitter at KevinLacey22, and now it's this like that. That's my pyramid now, floating in the air. I actually was gonna draw Erik Karlsson standing on top of this, but I didn't have time. But wow, like if you're a Sens fan, are you pissed or are you just like, whatever?
I'm done. If I'm a Sens fan, I'm done. But I mean, like, I'm very much not of the jump on the bandwagon of a different team because your team makes you angry type of thing. But in this situation, if this was roles reversed, oh man, I don't know. I might be done because like, what could I possibly like? Even as a fan, but even doing what we do, how could I possibly come on here and have anything to say? Like, do you really want to listen to me just want to kill myself for the next year and a half, 2 years, 3 years? Like, no one wants to listen to that.
The podcast would turn into, see you in 2019 when we have a draft pick to tell you about. Even though
what could you possibly, as a Senators fan right now, what could you possibly have to talk about? There's other news coming out of Ottawa right now that Gabriel Pajot might be injured for 4 to 6 months. Like, what optimism could you possibly have at this point? You don't even have your own first round pick. So I feel terrible for Senators fans, and I really do, because I think that it sucks to watch a team that was cup finalists almost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were in OT in Game 7 of the conference.
To fall this far so quickly, it's just I can't even imagine what kind of a gut punch that would be for a team that's like the second team in their own market, and you already have to deal with that. I don't know, man. I really feel for those fans, and I really, really do. So let's get this. I'm gonna give you the details here, although I'm sure we've all heard the details 800,000 times. But here we go. The Sharks give up Chris Tierney, Dylan DeMello, Rudolph Balcers, Josh Norris, the rights to Josh Norris, obviously, as he's currently in the NCAA. They also give up a 2019 second-round pick, the highest of whichever they own. The 2019 draft will definitely be a snoozer for us. A show that thrives on covering the draft. I don't know what we're going to do next draft. It's going to be like, and in the 7th round with our only pick, we picked this guy, and we know nothing about him. Good night.
And he's going to score 50 goals in the queue.
Right. They also have like some conditional picks here. We have the Mike Hoffman clause.
Yeah, there you go.
It's amazing. The Mike Hoffman clause, 2020 conditional first round pick. If the Sharks turn around and either deal Karlsson, which isn't going to happen, they're not going to deal Karlsson to a. I can't see them dealing Karlsson to another team this year. It's like Mike Hoffman. Like, Karlsson is a part of the thing. I can't even see them. Like, if you have Erik Karlsson, and even if you don't think he's going to sign here, do you ditch him at the deadline? I don't think so. So, I mean, unless he's in another jersey, they would get a conditional first round pick. They also get a 2021 conditional second round pick. And if the Sharks re-sign Karlsson or make the Stanley Cup final or both, the wording on this is really, really funny.
Basically, what it is like, if he re-signs with San Jose, they get an extra second, and then if he goes to the Cup, or if we go to the Cup final, it becomes a first.
But what if he doesn't re-sign and we go to the Cup final? Is there just no pick and play at that point? That's the part that with me,
which I think would be fantastic. Like, if we were just Cup final, and then he's like, "Hey, you know what? I don't want to sign here." And Ottawa's just like, "Well, what are we going to do now? We don't have any more draft picks."
Right.
Yeah. Well, what a train wreck. I mean, we've heard the term, tire fire. We've heard dumpster fire. I'm thinking Ottawa is a landfill fire. Like, especially with that video they put out. Like, good Lord, that thing was so awkward. So
I'm glad you brought up the video, because I mean, I feel like that video was like set the precedence for this trade. Like, I feel like the Senators and the Sharks knew this was going to happen yesterday or whenever that video came out, and Eugene Melnyk was like, let's soften the blow here before we announce this.
Poor guy Mark Borowiecki, they were kind of talking about it on Tim and Sid in Canada. Like, this is the guy being a total company guy, doing something he clearly does not want to have to do.
Yeah.
And then, the next day at the charity golf tournament, he's got to go back to the media and clarify a bunch of stuff. Like, the Melnyk owes that guy a lot. Like, nobody wants to do that.
But if you watch the video, he's not even going to have a job with the Senators next year or the next 2 years anyway, because he's turning over the entire roster, right?
Oh yeah, they have 23 roster spots available, but we're gonna have 25 new players. This podcast, we're gonna be the top of the ratings chart, but we're gonna shuffle out the whole staff. We're gonna talk about the draft, and then we're not gonna talk about the draft. And in 3 years, we're going to have a totally different team that we cover. But we're still going to talk about the Sharks.
Orange tinted glasses. Go Flyers!
That a lot of those questions too, to me, felt like, okay, now we want people to relax and feel better a bit. So you're going to ask me about this, and I'm going to say this. Like it didn't feel like a conversation. It felt like in, you know, like drama class when you're like reading lines with a partner. Yeah. That's what it felt like.
It felt really forced.
Let me cut you off and just tell you about something that you had nothing that talks about something that has nothing to do with what you just said. My favorite highlight of the video, of course, was, you know, all these rumors about the franchise relocating. What, the ones you started at the outdoor game, you dummy?
Yeah.
Come on. Like, oh, we're not going to move the team, and I don't know where these disgusting rumors got started, but we're not going anywhere. You started the rumors, you idiot. Yeah, I mean, that video was just so terrible. It was just such an awful video. Chat, I'm trying to keep an eye on you. Obviously, there's like so much to decompress here, so I'm going to try and obviously incorporate as much as I can from what you guys are saying. I just want to make sure that we're out of here in less than 4 hours tonight. That's my goal. 4 hours and out. No, but I just, yeah, I mean, that video was so cringeworthy. And like, again, going back to if I'm a Sender, like, I feel so bad for Sens fans right now. I'm jacked we have Erik Karlsson, but I take no satisfaction about what Sens fans are probably feeling right now. And I hope to God we as Sharks fans never have to go through this. Question was in the chat, though, and I was going to get here, was what did the Sharks get back along with Erik Karlsson? And that's a good question. So what you get back is AHL centerman Francis Perron. The interesting thing about this is that he was in Rouyn-Noranda the year that Timo Meier was there, the year they lost in the Memorial Cup final. He was the centerman for Timo Meier on that stacked Rouyn-Noranda Huskies team. That season, you know, he had 41 goals, 67 assists for 108 points in the queue, which isn't anything to sneeze at. On to his AHL, hasn't done a whole lot. 112 games, 10 goals, 31 assists. Nothing really to write home about. What I will say in his defense, though, is that between Belleville and wherever the hell they were before, Binghamton. That team is, yes, Binghamton, thank you. That team has been awful. Mm-hmm. The worst part about what the Senators have gone through is their cupboard is bare, pretty much bare. I don't say it's completely bare. They have Logan Brown, who I really like, but that AHL team is putrid. I would say it's similar offensively challenged to what the Barracuda team was last year.
Well, and to your point, their highest scoring player had 32 points.
Right.
And is now over in like Italy or something, isn't he?
I'm not sure.
Domenico. But, okay, so Francis Perron was a beast that year in the Memorial Cup, I remember. I thought he was great. I drafted him in my fantasy league, keeper league. I was really high on him. He is not he's just a guy who hasn't translated to the pro game so well. He's a guy who was really built on speed, or at least what I saw of him in juniors. He seemed very speedy. I have kept tabs on him when he was in Binghamton and now Belleville, and he's one of the slower AHL guys. Like, I don't know if he packed on a bunch of weight and it's just slowing, like TJ Gagliardi, and it's slowing him down. I'm not sure what's going on, but his game, I think, really has faltered ever since the speed issues have come in. So I'm excited for Perron just because I have been following him for years now. But if I was to rank him on the pyramid, I'd probably put him just above the everybody else category right now.
He was a 7th round pick for the Senators in 2014. To me, this is a guy, Doug Wilson does this all the time. He takes on a junior contract, he pays it the rest of the year, and then that player is gone. I think Perron is very much going to be in that vein of what's happened. We've seen this happen so many times where the Sharks will bring in a couple throw-in guys, AHL guys on a trade, they play out their contracts, and then they're gone. I think Francis Perron is probably on that track. He doesn't super excite me from a Barracuda perspective just because even after this trade, I think the Barracuda still have a pretty significantly stacked forward lineup. But that's my opinion. Jerk, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, everything. I'll be honest. When I saw that Perron was, part of the trade, and we can get back to Karlsson after this, but I'll be honest. He was not somebody that I had heard of. Obviously, I remember Timo Meier when he was with Ruin Naranda, and I remember that run very well. I, for whatever reason, have let Perron slip out of my mind, but I'm with you. Perron comes in, and Balcers, who could have won the Calder Cup in his first, or Calder Memorial Trophy, whatever the Rookie of the Year trophy is.
Memorial Trophy.
But now he's gone, and I mean, it is kind of a hard blow, with Balcers going out. But I mean, like you said, there are so many guys with the Barracuda who could easily slide right up. I mean, we've gone over it many times. We've all done pyramids. We know, what forwards are going to be there. Perron, I mean, if the Sharks were still affiliated with Allen, that's probably where he would eventually end up. But now it's really a mystery. But like you said, it's just another forward. So we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if, once that first round of training camp cuts comes through, we'll probably see a lot of guys get loaned to, maybe a team in their home country, or maybe just an AHL team altogether,
Yeah. Kevin, any final thoughts on Francis Perron?
Not so much Perron. I mean, I do want to touch on Balcers real quick, but we really should get back to Erik Karlsson.
I do want to definitely circle back and kind of just...
Yeah. But Rudolph Balcers, if for those of you who are new to the show, please subscribe. For those of you who are Sens fans who happen to be watching, thanks for watching. Rudolph Balcers is a guy who oozes creativity.
Yep.
He's probably the lone bright spot to me going to the Senators. I worry about his situation in the sense of what you talked about. The Sens farm system is completely depleted and has been so for a long time. Is he going to make the NHL team? He's probably good enough to make the NHL team this season based on what we saw with the Barracuda and all that skill. But is that going to be a good situation for him? Is Belleville a good situation for him? Because they're not going to be good either.
I think one thing, if I just can interject for a second, and I don't want to cut off, but I do want to interject for a second. I mean, it's not like he was like the top scorer on the Barracuda, and the Barracuda were pretty offensively inept without him.
That's where I was going with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think he can hold his own and be fine. But yeah, the Senators, that's the bright spot to me for the Senators' return. Because Josh Norris, he's all right. I think I've liked him the most out of all of us.
I've come around on him,
but still, I'm like, meh. And then the picks are picks. And DeMello, Tierney. Hey, here's a good thing that we didn't do enough shows this offseason. Everything we would have talked about in the offseason just got traded away today. So you didn't miss much, folks. But thanks for coming back. But yeah, Erik Karlsson, if you had told me 2 years ago Sharks got Erik Karlsson, I would have thought it was the guy that was on Carolina or on Charlotte on the fourth line.
Right.
This is insane. This trade is absolutely insane. And to keep Burns, I said, guys, there's no way the Sharks keep Burns if they bring in Karlsson, and now they have both.
Well, see, here's the thing that I thought when, I thought Burns would stay because all these guys have 3 teams that they will go to, right? Or they can just squash the trade. And none of those guys is going to Ottawa. Hey, Brent, how about Ottawa? No, go away, Doug. Hey, Logan, how about no, Doug? As far as those guys go, there's no way any of the guys that are signed long term. Hey, Vlasic, what about Ottawa? No. Yeah, it's nice and close to my home, but no, Doug, I'm not going to Ottawa. I can't see, but I mean, I think what does stand out is the fact that Tomas Hertl is still a Shark. Timo Meier is still a Shark. Ryan Merkley is still a Sharks prospect. Kevin LeBanc is still a Shark. I from that perspective, I think that's what surprises me the most.
Yeah, I get
all of that.
No, you're right. I was, like I said before, I was thinking, it's got to be it's got to be Hurdle. It's got to be, I honestly, I was thinking Merkley, like more than anything. My mindset was, okay, defenseman out, defenseman in, know, and Merkley. But then I kind of thought about it, and, Ottawa evidently passed on Merkley in the draft. Granted, they were picking 4, so kind of hard to not pass on him, but the point still stands. They passed on him. And, then I kind of was, I was like really racking my brain on this because, with Hurdle, and it's like, yeah, Hurdle's value's never been higher, but they've really committed to Hurdle and, helping him through his injuries. And I was thinking too, like, well, Sorensen maybe has played his value high enough for something like this. And then, I was thinking LeBanc, like my mind was all over the place. So to see that it was Tierney and DeMello, it definitely came as a surprise, and I like the draft picks. Obviously draft picks are draft picks, and teams are notorious for overvaluing them. And, I like Balcers for Ottawa. I know I was not the biggest Josh Norris fan, but like you, Ian, I really came around to him, and I like Josh Norris for Ottawa. But I mean, the Tierney and DeMello, like that's just to make the salary cap work. Like I just don't see those guys fitting into the long-term plans for Ottawa. And so the fact that, somehow Dylan Doug was able to hold on to, his jewels in terms of, the top guys he wants to keep around, like it's like, I don't have any other words for it just besides, amazing, really.
Yeah. And I think it's important. The other thing that's really, really important here too is, like you were saying, like the prospects that he gave up, like I really like Rudolph Balcers. I think Josh Norris is going to be a player. Like, I don't think anyone of us said, like, when he was drafted, we were down because the ceiling wasn't as high as I thought it should be when you're drafting a first round pick. But I think we all agreed, even when we were sour when he was drafted, that this was going to be a player. I think Josh Norris is a player. But, are these can't miss prospects? I wouldn't say either of them are can't miss prospects, to be completely honest. Balcers for all his offensive upside, but we've seen a lot of guys that have torn up, the lesser leagues to become a 10, 15 goal scorer in the NHL. Is Balcers a player? Probably, but, again, on Ottawa, I'm sure he is, and that's bad news for Ottawa, I guess, in my opinion. But, I mean, even what you gave up, like, prospect-wise, does it sting a little bit? But I feel like, again, Josh Norris is a guy that we have 10 of at this point, probably.
Yeah. Everything that the Sharks gave up, except for maybe draft picks, because the Sharks do have few draft picks, but everything as far as player assets go, the Sharks have that. And, I mean, Balcers, talk about the development of Chikovic and Chmelevski last season. I think that made Balcers a little more expendable, not to mention the fact that the Barracuda still have a ridiculous number of forwards.
Right.
And obviously Balcers was the best of them, but again, Sharks are trying to win a Stanley Cup, not a Calder Cup.
Yeah, and even Balcers, but I mean, like, there's potential. He could be, we might not even miss him after a full NHL season with Haagen-Dazs.
Yeah.
No, but you're right though. You're both right. I mean, you think about, how Bigowatz, he kind of, he was, a guy who impressed really well and signed, towards the middle of last year, if I'm remembering correctly. And then, obviously we all, we liked Chmelevski, we liked him as a draft pick.
Super high on Chmelevski.
Yeah. But, it was kind of thinking, okay, maybe 2 years minimum that he makes an impact, and then we'll kind of go from there. But no, his ATO with the Barracuda last year, he was my favorite player to watch, hands down. Like, he was just amazing with the puck. He was making things happen. And, obviously he's not going to get to play with the Barracuda this year. But like you said, Ian, next season, 2019-2020, we may not even miss Balcers because of Chmelevski and Chekhovik and Hal Bigowatz.
Correct.
So Erik Karlsson now on the team. The chat is really asking about defensive pairs.
That's where I wanted to go next.
And whatnot. I mean, Erik Karlsson is obviously, you said he's a top 3 defenseman. I also agree he's a top 3. I'm talking about in the league.
Defenseman in the league.
In the league, yeah. He's amazing. This creates quite a shuffle on the D pairs, and I'm trying to figure out where the ice time is going to be, because to have Burns and Karlsson there, and say one of them plays 27 minutes and one of them plays 25 minutes, is Justin Braun down to like 14 minutes? Like, I mean, holy cow.
Here's what I envision. And maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. I think that, and really to me, like Justin Braun, like, and I've always been on this, Justin Braun's the odd man out. Justin Braun is really the odd man out now. Like, I cannot see him being here after this contract is over. And I think, honestly, Doug Wilson says he's not done. Justin Braun, keep the bag packed because you're probably paying on the third pair. The way I see it, you put Vlasic with Karlsson.
Yeah, there's
Karlsson
no way
and
you
Burns
don't.
are different enough that I think the complement there will be very, very good. Whereas Burns and Vlasic has generally been a disaster whenever they put them together. I feel like Karlsson is going to be, is going to fit just perfectly with Vlasic, and I don't know why you would make any other pair. Peter DeBoer likes his left and right, so I don't think he's going to mix up his put his lefties with lefties and righties with righties. Your second pair, probably still Burns and Ryan at this point. I don't know why you would mess with that. And again, here's another contrast between Burns and Karlsson is like Karlsson. I mean, you could put Karlsson with Brendan Dillon, and I think things would be fine. Whereas Burns needs that objective piece. Like, there's Mark Mathot was not the key force to making that defense pair when that defense pair was tearing up Ottawa. Mark Mathot was the benefit of that. It's not like where that 1 year where Brent Burns was the benefit of having Paul Martin on his pair. That's not the way it works with Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson's the guy who Erik Karlsson is going to be to the benefit of whoever is with him. So I think you keep Burns with Ryan. From a lefty-righty perspective, it makes sense. And then, well, guess what, Justin Braun? You're now on the third pair with Brendan Dillon. For one, I mean, that's just stupid defensive depth. I mean, you don't have a bad pair in there. I think that those pairs will work really well. And the other thing with that is that, okay, you're wondering, like, okay, what happens to Justin Braun's ice time? There's still penalty kill. There's still power play. Like, you can get him special teams minutes. Maybe he doesn't get as many 5v5 minutes as he used to, but you still give him those extra minutes. And the benefit of having Karlsson there is I think Burns plays too many minutes, and I think not having Burns having to play all those minutes that Karlsson can now step into and eat, because we've seen Karlsson eat 50 bajillion minutes a game. I think Burns is going to be better for it because he's not going to get exploited in situations that he's been exploited in, especially last year.
Well, and the thing that I kind of look at with these pairs is, lately people have started to, and when I say people, I mean non-Sharks people, have started to realize that, Marc-Edouard Vlasic probably is the best defensive defenseman in the NHL. And you get him, we've seen it no matter who he's paired with, Braun, Demers, whenever he's had to pair with anybody else, he's got it locked down, no problem, just another day at the office. Now, picture the defensively stout Marc-Edouard Vlasic, and he's just like, hey, EK 65, go score 1,000 goals. And we got it locked down, no problem. Like, that's what I'm excited for, because Erik Karlsson likes to break the puck out. He likes to move the puck. He likes to get in on the action. And Marc-Edouard Vlasic loves to keep it locked down, keep everything away from Jones. And I think their styles are going to gel really well together. And honestly, play them 40 minutes a night. I don't care, Like, that's going to be fantastic to watch. And it's probably something that the Sharks have been lacking, to your credit, Ian. You talk about how Brent Burns logs a lot of minutes, and okay, that's fine, but we've seen him tire out when he logs a lot of minutes, and that's evidence, in that game against Vegas where they lost in overtime, versus you look at guys like Karlsson, even like Drew Doughty or like Victor Hedman, they can play probably a full 60 minutes and, have little to no issues. So I think minutes wise, there's going to be less to go around, but I think that's for the better, especially when you get to a situation where playoffs and if multiple overtimes becomes a thing, then for sure it's going to benefit the Sharks.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Drew Doughty, because I think another perfect example of how like Vlasic can mesh with other players in the chat. Like, there's a question of like, do you mess with that chemistry that Braun and Vlasic have? Absolutely. Look at Justin Braun's a really good defenseman, but he's not elite, and he sure as hell isn't generational. So you don't just, you give you're gonna separate them. You have to put your best possible lineup on the ice. Justin Braun and Marc-Edouard Vlasic is no longer your best possible option for that D pair. Period. I'm glad you brought up Drew Doughty because obviously on I'd be a far more stacked team. That Doughty Vlasic pairing at the Olympics, pretty damn awesome. And this is why I feel like when you look at Karlsson and Vlasic together, it's a match made in heaven. I can't think, even Nashville, who I gush over their defensive unit, I would have a hard time right now deciding who had the better D-core, Vlasic or sorry, with the Predators or the Sharks. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that Marc-Edouard Vlasic and Erik Karlsson is the pair that you go with because the Sharks have, for pretty much all of Vlasic's career, attempted to put him with an offensive-minded defenseman. And for the most part, it hasn't really worked. It worked with Rob Blake, but Rob Blake was 39 years old, and that was the end of his career. After that, I can't even remember who they put with him after that. And then after, but that tells you how well that worked. And then you've got Brent Burns, didn't really work that well. Him and Braun have been outstanding together, and Vlasic himself's the one who's raised his offensive game, but still we rely on him more in a defensive role. So putting him with Karlsson putting Karlsson with Vlasic is outstanding to me. Not to mention that, 2 years, a year and a half now, I've been saying I would like to see Brendan Dillon and Justin Braun paired together. I think it would just be a more balanced defensive six. I guess now it's time to see whether I was right or really wrong, because to me, that's what you go with. You go with Ryan and Burns, Vlasic and Karlsson as number one, by the way. And Dillon and Braun. And Tim Heed gets back into the 7th spot again now that DeMello's out. And Tim Heed also hopefully gets to learn under the tutelage of Erik Karlsson. He's not going to be Erik Karlsson, but he's that style of player. So what better way to improve on the craft you've been developing in Tim Heed than learn from the best player in the world at doing that?
Yeah.
There's a couple things in the chat I saw I just want to bring up really quick. So Rob saying, do you trade Braun for speed? Honestly, if you're trading Braun, and to that extent, if you're trading anybody, whether it's Braun or Dillon, I'm trying to think of who is even on this team still, or Donskoy or something like that. At this point, I think you're trading for draft picks just so you have something going forward in terms of futures.
I don't know. I mean, if you're at the deadline and you want to get you think you can add that extra piece though, like I wouldn't rule that out.
Oh no, absolutely not. But I'm just saying, like, if you're trading roster player, like, I don't know, to me, roster for roster, unless they're two different players, it's pretty much a wash for me. But, and then something else too, Cheryl talking about, I believe it was Cheryl. Yeah. Talking about Tampa Bay's defense, they, obviously they have Victor Hedman, but I mean, you go down further, Sergachev, superstar in the making. If you ask me, you've got Anton Strawman, who is probably, Eastern Conference Justin Braun, if I had to assign him a comparable.
I like that.
I don't hate that comparison.
And then, there's that guy who just signed a pretty hefty extension for 7 years after this year in Ryan McDonough. Not to take the air out of the Erik Karlsson balloon for all of us, but I just wanted to make sure I mentioned, Cheryl talking about, Tampa Bay's D-core. And we're starting to see this now, at least with the teams who are, competitive for the Stanley Cup. Sharks obviously have 3 potential Norris Trophy winners on their team. And, you look at, like I said, Tampa Bay with Hedman and McDonough. You look at Nashville with all the guys they've got. I mean, we're starting to see, it's not about the top number 1 defenseman and then guys who trickle out. If you want to win a Stanley Cup, you probably need a quote-unquote top number 1 defenseman on at least 2 of your 3 pairs.
Mike brings up an excellent point in the chat, man. If the Sharks have trouble selling tickets this year, they're a lost cause.
Yep, agreed.
Like, if they can't sell out that arena, I mean, obviously, like they're going to have to
funny
win.
That my ticket rep called me 15 minutes before the end of my work day. I wonder what she was trying to push.
I think, but obviously the elephant in the room, obviously, is Erik Karlsson is on the last year of his deal. And I feel very confident that the Sharks are going to re-sign Erik Karlsson. I think if you look at players that were not deadline acquisitions that have had time to sit and hang out and be Sharks, they've generally stuck around. And guys that the Sharks have groomed have generally stuck around as well. Logan Couture just signed a long-term deal. Joe Thornton, said was very much on the record being like, I didn't think San Jose was going to be much of a hockey city. I thought it was going to, play out the rest of my contract and be gone. And he fell in love and he stayed. Yes, the cost of living sucks. Yes, the taxes in San Jose suck. But guess what? These other guys make it work because they love it. There's no reason to think that Erik Karlsson by the end of the year won't have a signed extension in hand. Evander Kane, there's another guy. Now, if Erik Karlsson, for some reason, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here, but for some reason he doesn't re-sign, how do you now feel about that trade?
I'm still fine with it because, you know what, that's the cost of being competitive. And I think, myself included, I think we sort of lose sight of that is, generally, like you go back to previous Stanley Cup winners, and we've said it many times before, if you want something, you have to give something up. And, it's nice to have all your draft picks, and it's nice to have a full roster and a full prospect cupboard. But, you don't win Stanley Cups by being good. You win Stanley Cups by being great. And, we've seen many times before, even Minnesota 2 years ago, giving up a lot of assets for a guy who didn't come back. But you know what? Like I said, it's the cost of doing business. It's the cost of being competitive. And frankly, at this point in time, given where the Sharks roster is in terms of age and how long they've been in the league, it's probably now or never.
Oh, definitely. And now it's one. It's yet again one more push at the cup for Joe Thornton. But this is like for real.
Yeah, well, how long has it been for real, though? Like, I think 3 years ago, it was like, I don't know if Jumbo Joe can go past this year.
But I don't know how many more ACLs Joe Thornton can tear at this point. So I think this is his last year.
As long as he's not tearing anybody else's ACL.
True.
This
is Dustin
like,
Brown.
The NHL Network was bringing up the 06 Ducks, Niedermeyer, Pronger, Sharks bridesmaid in that. Here's my question. Anyone who is upset at this trade or is upset at the prospect that Erik Karlsson might not be there next year, what is the goal of being a team in the NHL? To win the Stanley Cup. I think we can all agree on that. I don't think there's any disputing that fact, right? That's the name of the game, win the cup. Last show that we did, I sat here and I said, yeah, I think the Sharks are good, but they're not a Stanley Cup contender.
Right.
They most certainly are today, if not one of the favorite teams suddenly to win the Stanley Cup. Even if, obviously look at, a lot can happen over the course of the season, but the Sharks right now are in a much better position to be they're not only the class of the Pacific overnight, but now they're a legitimate Stanley Cup threat. And if you don't make this trade, they're not. And when you look at, a lot of people are like, okay, well, what about the future? What about the future? Look, here's what the future is. You have guys locked up for 7 years. Logan Couture, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, Brent Burns. You have Jones for not as many years, but you still have Jones wrapped up to a significant contract. You have more guys coming. The Sharks run the risk, and this is something that I've said before, and I believe that you guys have agreed with me. The Sharks ran the risk when they signed all these long-term deals to try and keep this core together of becoming the Chicago Blackhawks with no cups. Just shedding bottom talent to make sure that they could, that they could stay afloat cap-wise. So some of the players that obviously the Sharks gave up may not have ever played for the Sharks anyway. Maybe they were sacrificed. Maybe they're cap sacrifices, what have you. Yes, is having all that money wrapped up in the defense. Like, obviously, let's just say Erik Karlsson re-signs for 8 years, which I don't think I have any problem with. No. Yes, that's a lot of money tied up into defense. But over those 8 years, like, you have the best defenseman in the league who's not going to be unseated anytime soon, in my opinion. Like, you have to go for it. You have these guys signed to 7-year contracts. You're stuck. This team is what you're stuck with, for better or worse. You have to make it the best possible team you can until Capageddon in 20 whatever, when the team's going to be, in just absolute dire straits because they've completely, all these guys are going to be off their deals and they're old and blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, though, is the way that you sign those contracts, you have to go for it now. You can't just be like, well, maybe if so-and-so turns out and, we can just wait till Ryan Merkley's ready.
And waste 5 years out of Vlasic's contract.
Right. Like, you can't do that. You have to get the best out of these guys while they're in their prime. This is what that move does. And I think if Doug Wilson wasn't making moves like this, it would just be gross negligence on his part. Because the team as constructed yesterday was not a cup contender.
Well, and it's funny that you say that because if you remember the last, when we did the impromptu podcast after the Max Pacioretty trade, Ian, you and I both agreed that the Sharks are probably the favorite to win the division, and that was without Erik Karlsson. So think where they can go now. I mean, I don't want to get people too excited just in case, something happens. But
you have to play the games.
That's the thing. You have to, like I said before, this is the cost of winning, and I'll say this, you said Capageddon, which I think you should trademark that word. There's no way if Erik Karlsson does re-sign with the Sharks, there's no way he's taking less than Drew Doughty. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All that money they almost thrown at John Tavares is his.
That's where I wanted to go with that is so Erik Karlsson, if he re-signs, that's an $11 or $12 million a year player, which I'm fine with. In this particular instance, I'm fine with that. Mm-hmm. What happens after this year, though? Like, okay, Justin Braun gets traded or let go or whatever, that's some money off the board, but that's not all. Because considering that all we've been hearing about is the cap will go, since probably January, is the cap will go up this year, but the cap will probably go down the following year. Are we looking at one more year of Brent Burns and then he's the one who goes?
Again, they're screwed trade-wise because they have the flexibility of Brent Burns can go to one of 3 teams that he chooses.
Okay.
I think look at this blue line, though. This blue line is fine. Where the problem is going to come is maybe the bottom pair. Up front is now where you're going to have the issues. If Joe Thornton wants to stick around for another year, it obviously has to be at less money. And I think Joe Thornton would pay for league minimum if he could still play. I think if he feels physically that he can still play, he will play for league minimum to stay in San Jose. Maybe not, but
I think Joe Thornton would give the team $5 million to play.
And okay, so the forward lines, the interesting thing becomes, the questions up front, in my opinion. Look at all of your RFAs next year are all the important ones aren't arbitration eligible, so they're going to take whatever you get them, or they're going to sit at home. They're not William Nylander, they're not Darnell Nurse. Like, these guys are not guys. Okay, Timo Meier's good, but they're not that caliber that they're sitting at home waiting for their $7 million checks. Right?
Yeah. No, you're right.
Okay. The guys that aren't, the guys that don't have, that do have arbitration rights, Joakim Ryan. Joakim Ryan might be able to screw the Sharks a little bit. Barclay Goodrow, get out of here. Yeah. Gone. Who needs new contracts? Melker Karlsson, Jonas Donskoy, guy. To steal a quote from Steve Dangle. They're just guys. They're interchangeable. You can replace them with prospects. You can replace them with free agent signings. If they want more money, they're gone. Big deal.
So those interchangeable parts that you're talking about, which I agree, I think one of the things that we've mentioned throughout the offseason has been, where's the scoring going to come from? Mm-hmm. That question has not been answered at this point.
Back end,
now, what's that? Not from the back end, yeah.
Clearly.
The Sharks now, from this trade, I feel like now you have a spot for both Antti Suomela and Dylan Gambrell.
Suomela.
So those are nice additions, but those are still probably going to be flipping between the third and fourth line between those two. And then you've got guy. Does the offense really come from the back end? Like, is this trade enough to keep the Sharks in the offensive zone so that you have another guy like, say, Melker Karlsson, pulls a Chris Tierney season this year and throws up 17 goals or something. Is that a possibility, or do the Sharks still need to go out and add to the wings?
Artemi Panarin.
That would be so sick.
The Sharks do not have enough draft picks for that one. Jesus. But
let's see. Chmelevski.
Well, apparently Doug Wilson sets the market. He's like, okay, look this is what this guy is worth now, and now you're going to give me him or else.
Yeah, well, what is that? Like you trade, what is it? You trade a paperclip for like some beans or something, and then you trade those for what? Like, I don't know, like some gold coins or something, and then you trade. Why? It's the same thing. Here's a Sasha, not Alex, Chmelevski. Oh, thank you for your 4th round pick. Oh, would you like a 4th? Please give us a 3rd. So on and so forth. Only the NHL worked that way. But Kevin, you talked about like where's the scoring going to come from? How are the forwards going to line up? That kind of thing. I'm thinking about this team and kind of where everybody's been the last 6 or so months. I think Joe Thornton, who no doubt in my mind, he's still in NHL shape and will probably have a relatively decent season. But I want to paint a picture for you guys. Now, let's say Joe Thornton, you slot him on, you put him in the 3rd line center spot and you get him playing with, a guy like LeBanc and maybe even Sorensen on the other wing. I think that would be a pretty deadly 3rd line. And then
hey, that's a year and a half ago we were asking for that to be the 1st line, so that I'll take that as the 3rd line. And then it's been, I've said it many times, Twitter, podcasts, yelling into the open area behind my backyard, but I'm not really a fan of Jonas Donskoi, but that Donskoi Pavelski Kane line was something interesting to watch during the playoffs, and I almost wonder, why not just see if that's something that can, be a future option going forward? Because I mean, as good as Joe and insert guy here have been, it might benefit the Sharks lineup wise and matchup wise to get that spread of quote unquote above average talent. I think back to 2016 when they had Patrick Marleau on the 3rd line. That setup gave the LA Kings fits, and at this point, I think you kind of have to see who can play where and in what position. Because, even though this team is a right now team, you have to know what guys are going to be able to give you 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And the only way to find that out is just by doing it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, guys in the chat, keep the questions going. We're trying to get to you. It's just obviously the Erik Karlsson chatter is
so much,
insane and so much to talk about. But thank you all for watching. I mean, we're like in record territory for live viewership. It's so thank you. Keep it going. Keep telling your friends. We do shows like this all the time.
Absolutely.
Please subscribe. We love you. Keep the comments coming.
Absolutely. And I think the big question for me isn't so much it's the bottom 6, obviously. With Chris Tierney gone, that's a hole. And as much as the logical answer might be, oh well, Tomas Hertl's going to go down and that's going to be the 3rd line center. And we've heard that so many times and it never ever sticks. So forgive me if I don't believe that Tomas Hertl is our 3rd line center. Like, someone needs to win Couture's draws, guys. It just has to happen. So what do you do? Because that's the Chris Tierney hole that's being left. Like Dylan DeMello, you just replaced Dylan DeMello with Erik Karlsson. That's there's no comparison there. Like this is the roster upgrade you made. It's infinitesimal. Like there's nothing to talk about with Dylan DeMello. He was the bottom pair defenseman, and now Justin Braun's probably taking his place. Up front though, Chris Tierney does leave a pretty considerable hole. If you look at the team, we've been on the train of, Suomela or Gambrell, and Gambrell really fighting for the 4th center position out of camp. Now, a lot of people have mentioned Suomela possibly being the 3rd line center. That's possible. I mean, look at Suomela's 24 at this point, I believe. He's got some definite pro hockey experience under his belt, albeit in Europe. I don't think it's a terrible thought, but it's definitely not a rock solid, like, I totally love our bottom 6 at this point thought. what do you guys think? Like, do you think that the Suomela Gambrell might be the bottom two defensemen? Is there someone in camp that you think might be able to wedge in between there and make it interesting? I don't know.
Centerman? Yeah.
Yeah, centerman.
Yeah. Suomela, I mean, for those of you who don't know, was the leading scorer in the Finnish Liga last season. He's a player that I've seen a lot about on paper. He is the play. Well, maybe now Erik Karlsson might be the player I want to see in training camp this weekend. But Suomela was the player that I really wanted to see because I do think he can be a 3C for the Sharks based on the one game I've seen of him play live and everything else on paper. He's a solid two-way player. I mean, he's Finnish, so that's like in their blood to be a solid two-way player, right?
Right.
And then he's shorter than Chris Tierney, but I think he has a lot of the same skill set. I think, again, we'll see what happens. I think I'm fine with it. I do think the Sharks, they gave up a lot, but I really think that they can fill in all the gaps that they got rid of to have such a significant upgrade on defense in Erik Karlsson.
Yeah, and look at when you have Erik Karlsson playing a bajillion minutes. I mean, it's not hard to get points when you're playing in the other end the whole game.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to play defense when you're not in the defensive zone, which is, what makes Erik Karlsson such a dynamic player.
Wait, real quick. Also, for 4th C, real quick, we don't give Barclay Goodrow enough credit for transitioning from wing to center last year. Because I thought he, in his spots as the 4th line center, I thought he looked the most comfortable he ever has as a pro hockey player.
Yeah, Goodrow. See, Goodrow's a guy that I always kind of forget. I don't forget about. I just, like, he's just, to me, he's one of those, like, he's definitely made strides, but to me, he's just one of those interchangeable parts, right?
Yeah, he's not my guy, but I think he stepped up last year.
He did, I think, but so did Marcus Sorensen. And, it's like, if you put Suomela and Gambrell at center, like, I don't even know if Goodrow has a spot on this team. When you consider Melker Karlsson's still there, and, like, I could easily see Goodrow being in the healthy scratch. Just as easily as I could see him being 4C.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be interesting. The great question in the chat. Before, because I want to jump. We've been on this for almost an hour, which is fine because it's Erik Karlsson and all the other stuff's just fluff anyway. But who do we like? How does this affect if Karlsson resigns? Oh man, we're gonna lose a player to Seattle, aren't we?
Oh, that question was amazing. Great job, Jesse, on that.
Yeah, a couple people asked that, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's we might be in a position like like Minnesota was, like Florida was, where we sort of have to finagle and kind of bend over for Seattle to not hurt us too bad.
I think the advantage is we do have next off season to get before there. So who knows how the roster would shape up by then.
Other thing is, all these guys, none of the Sharks players, all these new contracts, they're all like limited, no trades. There's almost no moves. Yeah. So they can really expose whoever the hell they can expose Brent Burns. If let's say they decide that, well, Erik Karlsson's infinitesimally better than Brent Burns, and we just, defense is where we need to shed some salary. I'm not advocating for this, and I'm not saying we should. I honestly think you leave Vlasic, Karlsson, and Burns together as long as you have, and fill in the rest as necessary. But you could expose one of them if one of them falls off really badly. You could expose one in the expansion draft. Same with forwards.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to get rid of Hockey Jerk in the expansion draft, and we were able to retain him.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Drew, though.
Well, Drew.
Oh, we did lose Drew. Shoot, that's right.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, like I said, this is the price of doing business. You clearly want to do everything you can to keep your best asset. That's why I'm still here. I feel like I would be a really good wrestling heel. But no, you're right. Like if the time did come, you could say Brent Burns, that blender that he keeps in his backpack and all those whatever snacks and trail mix and fruit and crap and all that stuff he's using for nutrition. If that fails him, it's a possibility. And I'm not saying that will happen or it should happen or I want it to happen, but it's a possibility. And I don't know. I don't know what's worse, losing a good player to expansion or giving up a good player so that Vegas takes a not so good player. I really don't know what's worse.
Well, we saw what happened when, oh, here, take this player. So we, oh man. Okay.
Take Ryan Merkley to keep our players, kind of thing.
Yeah. Take William Karlsson, so that we don't lose this player.
Take Melker Karlsson so he can become one.
Yeah. Take Melker Karlsson. He's just as good as William, we promise. I don't think you're going to see a lot of that. By the time the Vegas thing comes around, I don't think Merkley is going to have enough games under his belt to even be a consideration in that in the expansion draft talk. The other thing is like, what do you do with Ryan Merkley? Well, you let him develop and you see what he does, because eventually at some point, like, defensemen take a little bit longer to develop. Like, we know this. But Ryan Merkley could play some really damn sheltered minutes behind these three defensemen and be the next wave of Sharks defensemen going forward when these contracts start to expire or get compliance spotted after the third lockout of the contract. And like Merkley is a guy you just wait. You keep on. I don't think it changes anything. I think it's really foolish to judge to shed prospects based on what you have today, because you don't know what holes you'll have tomorrow, which is why you never draft by position. You always draft best player available, in my humble opinion.
I think that if Karlsson slides in and is an overwhelming success like we hope he will be, you could see some trade talks about Ryan Merkley if the Sharks needed a forward.
Sure. I'm not saying nothing's off the table. I'm just saying it's not. I don't think it's a given he's gone.
Yeah. I think it's awesome, guys, that we've gone from the beginning of the offseason, which was, oh, man, the Sharks have Jeremy Waugh, and we don't know if he's even going to be healthy ever.
Right.
To Mario Ferraro's been a really nice prospect to, hey, we got Ryan Merkley, to, hey, we got Erik Karlsson. Like now Jeremy Waugh, you can be injured as much as you want.
Jeremy Waugh.
No, but don't. Please don't. But I'm just saying.
Another question in the chat, because we didn't actually get them. We were talking about line combinations. Do you put Burns and Karlsson together on the power play, or do you separate them? I think I'm going to go first. If you're I feel like if you're at the end of a game and you really need a goal, then maybe you put them on the ice together. Otherwise, spread out the attack. Right?
Yeah, I agree with you. If you're you're right, Ian. Like if you're down by a goal, or I don't know, down by 2 goals, maybe you put them both out there, you let them see what they can do. You get Erik Karlsson in that top spot, you get Burns, right-handed, like on the left side, just let them wire it, and who knows, but every other game tied early in the game, winning, whatever, keep them on different units. I mean, like you said, spread it out, kind of make sure everybody gets a little bit of the love from the elite offensive defenseman. And I'm hoping that the acquisition of Erik Karlsson will finally get Vlasic off the power play.
If it doesn't get Vlasic off the power play, I quit.
I was going to say, if it doesn't get Vlasic off the power play, nothing will.
That's a sweater burning moment, in my opinion. I'm just kidding.
One of the things I like about this trade also is, even though Erik Karlsson is a right-handed, right-side defenseman, to my knowledge, he's usually been a left-side defenseman on the power play. You could put him with Burns in that case, but I definitely would not. What I would like, though, is for Karlsson to remain on the left side for whatever power play pair he is, just so it's not the same thing on both units. Okay, Burns is a threat on the right side, Karlsson's a threat on the right side. Gee, I wonder what side we should kill harder on. It gives them more flexibility, more options. I'd like to see Karlsson on PP1 and Burns on PP2 to mix that up as well. So just, yeah. I think you spread the wealth, as you said, Ian.
Yeah, spread the wealth. I think maybe in certain situations you put them together, you're down by a goal. There's 3 minutes left in the game. maybe you get a power play, maybe you pull the goalie. Yeah, put them out together. Great, fantastic. But just in a general power play situation, spread it out. I think like the Sharks power play obviously had its woes last year, and I think not having Joe Thornton was a big part of those woes. Because I think for as much as we complain about Joe Thornton on the power play, God, the power play sure sucked when he was gone. Right? Like there was a noticeable drop off in it when he was gone for all our complaining.
Yep.
Although, what?
Yeah.
Like, for all we said, about splitting them up, and I do agree that you should split them up, but you guys remember early last season when they had Burns and Tim Heed on the same power play unit? Like that was dangerous for the penalty killing team. And, you swap out Heed for Erik Karlsson, like that could be even like the Sharks power play could be, 100% for all we know. But I think generally, like if I'm a hockey coach, which I'm not, but if I'm a hockey coach, my first inclination for the power play is to have, a right-handed guy play the left point, a left-handed guy play the right point, so you can get them open for that potential one-timer. And so applying that logic, Burns and Karlsson would be on different units. But like you said, Ian, if they're losing, need a goal, whatever, obviously you can make that change. But I think to start,
yeah.
The chat is talking about something that Laurel asked, which is why was it reported that when the trade was announced, that Erik Karlsson was shocked? You guys want to take this?
I mean,
like to me, he was like Mr. Ottawa. Like every time we heard about him, it was the humanitarian side in the city of Ottawa, and he was like the guy.
He's the best player that franchise has ever had, period. He might be the best player that this franchise has ever had, period, at this point. But he's the best. Look at, he's the best player Ottawa's ever had. Melker Karlsson. Erik Karlsson is a generational defenseman, in my opinion. Like he's forget elite. Melker, for F's sakes, Erik Karlsson is generational. Forget this elite nonsense. He's generational, in my humble opinion. He's been in Ottawa for 9 years. He's been there through the good, the bad, everything. I mean, everything that team has gone through, he's generally been there through it. He's watched good players walk out the door for nothing. He's been there with Melnyk, just completely doing the best way he can blast holes in his feet that are possible. It's hard. You live somewhere for 9 years. You do something. You're with a group of guys for 9 years. I mean, I'm not saying everyone's, been there the whole time, but you've been in a situation for 9 years. It's shocking. I think it's still shocking. Even if you have an inclination it's coming, it's still shocking that when it finally happens. They had all summer to trade Erik Karlsson. There's rumors like, oh, it's heating up again. Oh, it's cold. Oh, it's heating up again. I mean, when you've been traded in the media 17,000 times over the past years, maybe it stops being real until it actually happens.
Yeah, I vaguely recall interview, like a media scrum or something he had towards the ends of last season, where he was asked, because I mean the whole back half of the season was Erik Karlsson. I almost said Melker and William there.
Wow. You just need Linus now and we're good.
Does he want to be traded? And every time he was asked, he said, I don't want to leave the city of Ottawa. And I feel that was a nice way of escaping the question, because it was never, I don't want to be traded from the Senators. It was, I want to stay in the city of Ottawa. And I think he really did love it there. I believe he met his wife there.
His wife's from Ottawa.
His wife's from Ottawa, right? Yeah. So, I mean, he's the heart and soul of that franchise, especially now that, Daniel Alfredsson has retired, come back, left again, like he was the guy. William Karlsson. Thank you, M. Hackle. See, I can't even say M. Hackle right now. Oh my goodness.
I think what it is, the reason why we're all talking about Melker Karlsson is because Peter DeBoer is secretly trying to get us all to keep his favorite player in the conversation and keep it relevant. Because I mean, it's There's just no way of explaining it. Oh, can't score, Melker Karlsson. Can't stop pucks from going in your net, Melker Karlsson. Penalty kill, Melker Karlsson. Power play while you're losing, Melker Karlsson.
Bearded Shark guy, this could be the new Teal Tinted Glasses drinking game where if we give the wrong Karlsson, you have to drink. I think
so.
I like it.
By the way, are we going to have an E Karlsson and an M Karlsson, or are we just going to have Karlsson jerseys on the Sharks?
I think we're just going to have Karlsson jerseys. Maybe
I hope so, because I think the initial thing is really tacky.
Maybe Melker has to get an M just because, like, we know the 65. We know who that is.
Well, that's actually something I wanted to bring up. So, it'll be interesting to see if how Bigawatts will be nice enough to seed the number 65.
I was going to save that for the end of the show.
Oh, man.
I mean, I don't know. Hal Bigawatts is kind of a big deal, and he has been here longer. So I think Erik Karlsson, would be disrespectful of him to ask for the number. Such a seasoned guy.
Hal Bigawatts is going to wear number 50 on Saturday.
Are you sure he's not going to wear, 84 or 96 or what are the other 82?
Well, I think he wore 97 in juniors, but apparently that number is taken by some SPHL guy on tryout. What was I going to say about that? I don't know. You got me all thrown off. Hal Bigawatts.
Okay, so I kind of want to just move to Ottawa here for a second, and just how our former
did we get traded?
Players, we got traded to Ottawa.
We're moving to Ottawa.
I am not moving to Ottawa. No, okay.
Linus Karlsson. We have Linus Karlsson too. Sorry.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's just going to be, we get William, we have the full set, right?
Karlsson's must be always.
We just have to trade for William now, have the whole sweat. That's going to be the Braun for William Karlsson trade at the end of the at the trade deadline. Have the whole set.
Yes.
Okay,
all right, so we're moving to Ottawa.
I just want to talk about Ottawa quickly because it's going to be interesting to see where our guys can fit in, right? Because Ottawa's a disaster. I don't know if anyone here listens to the Bobcast, but Bob McKenzie just did a rundown of all the Canadian teams, and when he was talking about Ottawa, he talked about how Gabriel Peugeot's probably playing second line center because they just have no one else, right? So they have to force him up from 3C, where he'd probably be more comfortable, probably excel, to the second. And now Gabriel Peugeot is rumored to be out for 4 to 6 months because he hurt himself training. Could Chris Tierney be the number 2 center on this team?
Not could. I think he is.
He is.
Like the de facto number 2 center.
Colin White.
I want to say
Brown?
this. Logan Brown is more of a winger, if you ask me. But that's just my opinion. But let's not forget who did think back to last year. Who on the Sharks did Chris Tierney have the most chemistry with? Mikhail Bodker, who plays in Ottawa. So
Mikhail Bodker.
Is that going to be a reunion? I'll be shocked if it's not.
Wow.
Matt Duchene's gonna be the number 1 center in Ottawa.
Well, at least until February 25th.
At least until February 25th. I just, by necessity, Matt Duchene has to be that team's number 1 center, no?
Well, I think Matt Duchene is the number 1 center, so it works out.
Yeah. But, I mean, oh, man.
Okay,
I mean, Zach Smith is still their top line left wing at this point. Alex Formanton, I freaking love, and he did great in Ottawa's rookie tournament, but man, I think you have to send him back to juniors just to keep him away from the Senators this season.
You have the husk of Bobby Ryan. Marian Gabourik's probably not going to play. Like, this team is just, wow.
Are you guys shocked that the Sharks didn't have to absorb Bobby Ryan's contract to get Erik Karlsson?
They couldn't. The cap move that would have to go with it would have been a non-starter. If that's what had to be done to get Erik Karlsson here, Erik Karlsson's not here. Period.
No. Agreed. Man, things were so much simpler. Remember when Ottawa had Turris, Brassard, and Pajot, and everything was just fine? Now it's not. Like, Ottawa, okay, so Duchene and Stone are nice. Like, they're really good players. But, I mean, like the guy that Duchesne had the most chemistry with is Mike Hoffman. He's gone, you know, and now you have Chris Tierney, who's your second line center, you know, at least for now. And he's shown in the past with the Sharks that, you know, the reason why he needs good players to play with him is because he can't elevate bad players. And if he's going to be lining up with, you know, Mikhail Bodker and Ryan Dzingel, like as much as I love Ryan Dzingel, like you're not scoring goals on that line. And maybe you'll get a couple, but you're not going to get as much as you would theoretically need to win some games. Ottawa and that defense, I mean, you know, Chabot, depending on where your vernacular is from, you know, he's probably their best prospect defenseman. And, you know, CC, I like general
defenseman this year.
That's he's probably your number.
Like,
yeah, I like Cody CC, but he's not what people say he is. You know, you got Chabot, but beyond that, I mean, DeMello,
I was gonna say you got Wolanin and DeMello, who are both third pair defensemen.
Right.
Yeah,
like they're in their middle pair. Like it's just, I mean, these guys are going to get opportunities, obviously, that they weren't going to get in San Jose. But whether is that going to force them in situations that are way over their head? I think it's going to be interesting to see DeMello, because I think DeMello, there seems to be a big divide in the Sharks community of what DeMello actually was.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to say, let's remember too, Brady Tkachuk is going to be on the NHL roster this year.
Yeah, I like that's Brady a lot. Tkachuk, that's a lot to ask of. Like,
it
but
is
you're looking at Thomas
it's a lot. It's a lot to ask, but he went pro for a reason.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not disagreeing. I just think when you look at like, doesn't this kind of smell like Edmonton? Just throwing guys to the wolves without anything to back them up.
I could tell you what it smells like, but there might be children listening.
Craig Anderson requested a trade a couple weeks ago, so I'm guessing he's the next one out at this point.
Could be. I mean, from top to bottom, that team is not having a good go of it. I mean, if you lose Craig Anderson, who has probably played, you know, really well for longer than he probably should have, but now you say you trade him, you have to shoulder all that weight to Mike Condon. Like, it's brutal.
Oh,
like,
yeah, poor those goalies too. Oh my god, they're gonna get shelled. All right, let's get to some other. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin, and then we gotta get
Skylar brings up a point I did see on Twitter earlier, which was Ottawa's not getting Jack Hughes next year either.
Right. And that was you're right. And that was, I think, the one point that I had written down that we had made. And then I'm going to move on to some other league news, and then we're going to get out of here. The winner of this trade is obviously the San Jose Sharks. The number 2 winner of this trade is the Colorado Avalanche, because this team is going to be putrid. I don't remember. Like, I'm looking at this roster and who's going to be playing. I don't think I have that blue line, especially. I don't recall a blue line that is worse than that blue line, like that has ever been iced in the NHL. Is this the worst blue line to ever been iced in the NHL? Yep.
I said one of our earlier shows, Julius Bergman might get a game this season just because it's Ottawa. Now he will get a game just because it's Ottawa.
Julius Bergman, third pair NHL blue liner.
Yeah.
Wow. Never thought.
How the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, good call. And the Barracuda still have 20 forwards or whatever after this trade.
Well, and you know what? Like, you know, for a lot of people are looking back to, you know, 1 goal away from the Stanley Cup final, and you know, that's all well and good, and you're right, but like that team had a lot of really good pieces in place. You know, I mean, I talked about Hoffman. Obviously, there's off-ice issues that kind of forced that trade, but, you know, you had Hoffman, you had Derek Brassard, you know, you had a relatively decent team who's probably not winning a Stanley Cup, but, you know, could easily make the playoffs, and because you have a bad season and people's feelings got hurt, now you've ripped it to shreds and then lit the shreds on fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty terrible. Okay, so a couple of other things that happened when we were on the air the other night, when we did the little thing after the rookie game. Max Pacioretty got traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. Kevin, you weren't on, so I want to get your thoughts on the trade, and then Jerk and myself, we can decide if we feel any differently than we did in the moment.
I can't even process any other trades right now. Like, I mean, I seriously, okay, it was Suzuki and a first and
a second.
Suzuki, okay. A second, and Tomas Tatar.
Oh, Tomas Tatar. Okay, yeah, that's right. I liked the trade for Vegas at the time. In fact, now you're just looking at the Pacific Division going from being really weak to having a couple of potential powerhouses. I think you talked about winners of the trade, and let's talk about some losers real quick of this Sharks trade. I think Vegas is a loser. If the Sharks are able to re-sign Erik Karlsson, that pretty much negates Erik Brannstrom in Vegas, who I think will be the next Erik Karlsson. And I think was the piece that would have gone back to Ottawa. And you're looking at Vegas now having traded. Huh?
Him or Nick Hague.
Yeah.
One of them will probably go back to Ottawa.
Yeah. And you're looking at everything that the Knights gave up for Tomas Tatar. And then what they gave up with Tatar plus Suzuki plus first plus second, you know, all of that could have been for Erik Karlsson. And instead, Ottawa ended up with Dylan DeMello, Chris Tierney at first, you know, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, Vegas asset management. George McPhee, GM of the year, no problem. But, man, I mean, so hey, at least they got Pacioretty, though. I do think that's a strong move, especially to replenish forwards that they lost in the offseason, like James Neal. And then I two other losers, I think, in this trade, just real quick while I'm thinking about it, are Edmonton and Calgary. Because Edmonton and Calgary trying to bolster themselves this offseason back into contention, like serious contention, and you look at what Vegas and the Sharks did, and you're just like, come on, when's it our time? So, but yeah, I like the Pacioretty move for Vegas. So,
yeah, and then that's the thing is, you know, I've had time to think about it, and I on our impromptu show, you know, I did say pretty much, you know, Vegas, what are you doing? But I do like the move for Pacioretty. I mean, you get, you know, if you ask me, you get some security in your goal scoring department. I mean, you had a lot of guys who put up a lot of points, you know, this past year, and there's no reason to believe that they can't at least attempt to get to that point again. But a lot of the guys who were scoring a lot of points had never done it in the NHL before. So now you have some security. You have a guy who, in my opinion, is good for at least 30 goals. You've got him locked up for 4 more years after this year. And, you know, I think it was a smart play on their part. But then you look at it on the other side, like you said, Kevin, what Vegas gave up to get Tomas Tatar, and then they gave up on him, 7 months later? It's like, I think a better spot in the lineup in a full season, I think, may have done him wonders, but now he's on to Montreal, and it is what it is. But, you know, considering what Montreal probably could have got for Pacioretty a year ago, 18 months ago, I think Vegas did all right for themselves. But at the same time, I saw a tweet that said, for once in a trade, Montreal is not the stupid one. And I have to agree, you know, like we've said before, draft picks, always nice. You know, Nick Suzuki, you know, looks to be a top 6 center in the NHL, and that just so happens to be what Montreal needs the most. And as I've said many times before, again, Twitter, podcasts, what have you, I'm a fan of Tomas Tatar. I think he's good for 20 goals. I think he's a very underrated two-way player. And you're probably going to see Tomas Tatar. You're going to see him with Max Domi and Drouin. Why not see what he can do? See if you've got a player there, because even though he had a really bad year last year, specifically with Vegas, he still hit 20 goals. And I've always said, if you hit 20 in a season, generally you're doing all right for yourself.
Yeah, I've come around in this trade. I think it's a good. I think it's actually a good hockey trade. I think both teams got what they need right now. Look, Montreal's going nowhere right now. But having Nick Suzuki in the lineup, that's, you know, coming down the road when you've got other guys like, you know, Kotkaniemi and Ryan Poling already in the system. They're going to have center options when they're ready to be good. The problem is that Carey Price is going to be 4,000 years old and still under contract when that happens. But so the Canadians kind of get what they need right now. Tomas Tatar is like you said, he's a 20 goal scorer. It's a great, it's a great stopgap player for them to kind of just be a team in the NHL that maybe, they're going to put butts in the seats because it's Montreal, but at least give them something worth watching right now, because I think that Montreal's in for a rough season, maybe not as bad as Ottawa is now, but they're going to be in for a rough season still. And look at Vegas is coming out of being in the Stanley Cup final. They have prospects to spare. They've got picks to burn. And they're still a pretty damn good team. In fact, before today, I might have said they're the best team in the Pacific still. And now, they bring in Max Pacioretty, who, again, goal scorer, good for goals. Yes, had a putrid season last year. So did everyone in Montreal. This is a guy who's a perennial 30-goal scorer. You just lost James Neal. Well, guess what? Now you have Max Pacioretty. That loss seems like it stings a whole lot less suddenly, right? So I feel like, Vegas, they want to go for it. They're going to continue to go for it while they've got, they've got the team that they do. And so I think they're, this is a move that says we're still going all in. And I think if you're Vegas, why the hell not? Why the hell not go all in? You have now, you have the future. You can't really complain. Look, are they, is everything, is Vegas going to be this runaway train again? I don't know, but I sure as hell ain't betting against them.
Let me ask you this, just jumping back to Montreal really quick. Does going to the Habs, does that make Suzuki's route to the NHL go quicker or take longer or the same?
I'm going to say the same.
Okay. Because I even though logically I'm with you, because a guy like that, you want him to be absolutely ready for the NHL, but at the same time, we know how desperate Montreal is for centers. I would not be surprised if Suzuki is point per game in preseason, and then all of a sudden Marc Bergevin and Claude Julien are like, hey, this kid can play, although they would probably say it in French.
He might get a 9-game. Maybe he gets a look. I don't even think he gets a look this year. I don't think as much as I like Nick Suzuki, I like Nick Suzuki's potential. I don't think he's an NHL player today.
That's
even
fair.
On a shitty team. Like I don't think he's a player today. I think Montreal, for all the things that we say about Montreal also is pretty good about not exposing their players early. Now maybe they're going to have to in a couple of cases, but I don't think they're going to throw anyone into the fire that they don't need to throw into the fire right now. Like I think they're completely content to just let these guys marinate. And look, it's Montreal. People are going to buy tickets. They could put an ECHL team on the ice and people still buy tickets to watch them. They're not hurting for money.
I don't know. The argument could be made though that they kind of threw Jonathan Drouin to the wolves in terms of playing center.
Yeah, but he's an NHL player at least.
Okay, that's fair.
Like he's not. He's a bona fide NHL player at this point. Whereas Nick Suzuki needs time to mature in junior, and then maybe might a year in the AHL. Jonathan Drouin's a 3rd overall pick, superstar in the making. Yeah, sure. What else was there? Because I don't want to get stuck on too much stuff here.
I just got a text from my friend Andy. What's up, Andy? He asked, have you seen Tyler Seguin's contract extension announcement? It's awesome. And yes, I have seen that.
I didn't even Tyler Seguin, because I slept and I woke up and this Erik Karlsson happened, and then I've been just completely, whether it's been writing an article on Teal Tinted USA and doing a bunch of stuff, I really haven't had a chance to breathe.
Yeah.
All I know, Tyler Seguin, 8 years, $9.85 million. Way to go, Sharks! Way to upstage that. What do you think of the Tyler Seguin contract, though? I think it's great. I think it's exactly what the Dallas Stars needed to do. They could not afford to lose him. Yeah, they still top heavy for sure. They are, but they've got some decent young defensemen that could come up. I mean, you can't lose a player of Tyler Seguin's quality for nothing, and you're not going to get value for him in a trade. Stuff that in your pipe and smoke it, Boston.
I think the John Tavares thing set the precedent for Dallas to get on their horse and get to that contract, get that contract done.
So stroke him off your. I don't even know if that list even exists anymore, but your Sharks, Shark Watch free agency 2019. Take him off your list, guys. He's gone. I don't think that's a list anymore.
I like this deal. I mean, now it's been spoken about many times, and if you ask me, too many times about state tax in Texas and blah, 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 this, that, and the other. But you know what? Let's look at this. Just take state tax out of it. You get and I'm going to say the E word, you get an elite #1 center for under $10 million. Now, this guy's good for in a bad year, the year that he was all messed up and was playing fourth line left wing. He put up 30-plus goals in the regular season, So you're getting a guy who's good for 30 goals, is good for about 30 to 40 assists whenever Jamie Benn is putting him away. Like, this guy, and I hate to even use the word underrated because he's so good, but this guy's probably the most underrated player in the NHL right now. He's good for 70 points on a bad year. And like I said, you get him to a deal that's under $10 million a season. I think it's a big win for Dallas. And if you can start to lay down some more pieces to get a good team there, I think they could be back in the playoffs, before we know it.
Word.
Yeah. Awesome announcement video, guys. Check that out, though.
I'm going to check it out because now I feel like I need to.
Yeah.
Steve Yzerman has decided to step down as GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I wish I had so much more time to go tonight because I think this is so fascinating. We talk about this for an hour, but we won't. He steps down as the GM in Tampa Bay. He's going to be a senior advisor, cited family as the reason. Going to be a senior advisor for the rest of the season, and then this contract is up in Tampa anyway. What are your thoughts on this?
The only thing I got, because that boggled my mind to hear that. I guess I know where you guys are going to go, and I'm going to let you have that. But for me, I've heard great things about Julien Brisebois for a long time.
Yes.
For a very long time, I've heard nothing but positive things about him. What a bright guy he is, and now he's got a chance to back up what everyone said about him. It's nice that Steve Yzerman is going to stay on in a supportive capacity. I think that it's still his team in that respect. And then Brisebois can kind of shape it with Yzerman's guy, because Yzerman's come up and just been an amazing general manager. So, I mean, you look at players like Wayne Gretzky, terrible coach. Patrick Waugh, But Steve Yzerman's been a wonderful man. And Joe Sakic, another manager. Steve Yzerman's great.
Steve Yzerman, I think, to cut you off for a second, I think Steve Yzerman, the benefit to Steve Yzerman, though, is that Jeff Vinik just let him do his job. Whereas I think ownership in Colorado, ownership in Carolina for sure was the problem for Ron Francis. The one thing in Tampa is Jeff Vinik lets his general manager do his job.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done. I'm throwing it to you, hockey jerk.
I was definitely surprised. I had a friend of mine, text me the news, and I kind of thought he was trolling me a little bit. Come to find out he wasn't. But, it's very curious. It did not occur to me that he had been commuting from Detroit to Tampa Bay. And, if you think commuting from Gilroy to San Jose is a hell of a trip, that's even worse. But there's no way. I mean, to start anyways, he's probably hanging out with the family, doing, going to whatever, soccer games and, cooking up family dinners and whatever it is dads do. But there's no doubt in my mind that when Ken Holland eventually retires, moves on, gets fired, quits, whatever, there's no way that Steve Yzerman's not at the top of the Ilitch family's list for a general manager.
Yeah, I think Detroit makes a lot of sense if family considerations are is the reason, and I have no reason to not take Steve Yzerman at face value, because I think sure. Look at the situation he's leaving in Tampa. He's not gonna have a better situation in the league. Look what he did for that team. When he took over, a lot of people were like, oh, Steve Yzerman, yeah, big deal. He put together a Team Canada that won a gold medal with the with NHLers. How hard is that? Well, ask whoever was making the team in Torino, Nagano, just how hard that is. But I feel like Detroit, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if he truly wants to stay, if he wants to do the GM grind, you've got to figure that the seat in Detroit is being kept warm for him by Ken Holland. Ken Holland has actually been long time, ever since the Seattle talk started. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt about Holland possibly, stepping down to do the GM job in Seattle. So I don't know if Ken Holland finally just steps down. I think that if I'm in Seattle, I'm terrified of the prospect of Ken Holland being my GM, because let's just say of the two between Steve Yzerman and Ken Holland, one's done really, really well in the salary cap era. One's done really bad, really, really, really bad. So, does Seattle make a lot of sense? Not really, if he's going to have to continue commuting. But it could happen. Look, if I'm a NHL owner, and I know that, Yzerman's contract's up next year, I might be giving a call Steve Yzerman, and have a little letter of your fired current general manager ready to go on my desk, just in case you can lure him out. Could he go to Seattle? Sure. I can't imagine him being anywhere other than Detroit, though, especially, when it must be hard for somebody who, like Steve Yzerman, who took that team, basically, him being drafted, him becoming captain, changed that team, helped it become the juggernaut that it was. It must be hard for, even as a division rival, it's got to probably hurt Steve Yzerman in the heart a little to see the state that Detroit's in right now and not want to fix it with his ties to the city, the Illiches, everything else. So, I think Detroit makes a ton of sense. I wouldn't say it's a done deal. Holland does have 1 year left on his deal after this one. So that is something to consider as well, although I wouldn't be surprised to see the Illiches also just be like, here, Ken Holland, have some money for next year, and Steve Yzerman's taking over.
See, and to kind of put a bow on the whole Steve Yzerman topic, I don't know if weird is the right word, but I always thought it was kind of interesting that, Steve Yzerman comes through, and we've seen it, GMs and coaches, generally if a former player is going to fill that role, it's for a team that they played for. And it always fascinated me how Steve Yzerman, rolled up to Tampa, a team he never played for or had any connection to, and was like, you know what, I'm going to build a contender out of this. And that always kind of fascinated me, because I feel like he had so many chances to go to Detroit and, have like a BS position, special advisor or, athlete, legends, coordinator, whatever. So the fact that he made a pretty solid name for himself in Tampa Bay, it always kind of amazed me. And so if he goes back to Detroit, I think it would be similar to, Trevor Linden going back to Vancouver, where it was like, our boy has come home and he's going to lead us into the future kind of thing.
So sorry to cut you off there, Hockey Jerk.
No, I was done.
All right, because I was gonna say there's even more news, folks, because 2 new captains in the NHL were named today, and you wouldn't know because all the other stuff that's been going on. And now we're gonna throw it to Drew Weber live in Raleigh, North Carolina, amidst the hurricane, to talk about Justin Williams as the new. Oh, we're running out of time. Sorry, Drew. Maybe next year.
Maybe next year. You know what? Now that you said that, though, I do want to mention that obviously, if we have any listeners in that area, please, to God, be safe. These storms are no joke. Be safe. Don't do anything stupid. We hope you come out the other side of it okay, whether you're a listener of the show or not. There is one last topic I want to hit, and that would be the Austin Watson suspension. Again, another topic where I feel like we go crazy into, but I just want to hit it quick. Just some initial thoughts here. I don't want to spend too much more time online. There's a couple things that I want to pimp before we get out of here. So, Mr. Hockey Jerk, what did you think of the Austin Watson suspension?
You know what? I think it was good. I won't comment on the amount of games because I'm unsure how I feel about it. I feel like it's the right amount, but I feel like it could maybe be more. But, good on the NHL for putting their foot down and making an example out of somebody. We saw them do this with Slava Voinov, and which was good. And now, Austin Watson, a guy who's from this hemisphere, gets the same treatment in terms of, domestic violence, off-ice issues and whatnot. So like I said, good on the NHL for, standing their ground and making an example out of him. And, obviously the NHLPA has to appeal it. They would be doing a disservice to their players if they didn't. But
right.
I really hope the NHL doesn't back down in this case because, domestic violence all throughout sports, football, baseball, basketball, NHL, it's been a topic that's come up. And in our society as a whole, it's been a topic that's come up. And frankly, a lot of the time it's been shirked off without any major concern. And so I think the NHL is doing a really good job. And to my recollection, is setting a precedent in terms of handling these kinds of cases. So I hope that with this NHLPA appeal process, I hope that they stick to their guns and they don't back down on it, because when you take the sport aspect out of it, it's a pretty serious issue.
Just to follow up on that, so when the PA appeals these things, it goes towards an independent arbitrator. So it's not like the NHL. I don't think the NHL would back down. It's going to get arbitrated out, and the arbitrator's going to decide, not necessarily the NHL. In my opinion, I don't know the details of what happened, and I don't think it matters. The one thing I hate about these situations is we compare suspensions. Like, that's just human nature. Oh, well, this guy got 20 games for drug use, and this guy only gets 27 games for domestic. So I don't like that comparison, because I think that these things should kind of exist in a bubble. I think I'm fine with the amount of games. Look at it's a third of the season it's a third of the season and he pled no contest. I mean, it's an open shut, like in the legal system, it's been open shut. My question is, Austin Watson, 20, 30-point guy, really easy to suspend for a third of the season. What I want to see, and I don't want to see it from I want to see someone beat their wife. No, I don't. But is the NHL going to use this as a consistent benchmark, or does the 50-point scorer, the 70-point scorer get 15 games, 10 games? That's what I want to see. I want to see I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. I think that this is something that you want to see the league do, but I want to see consistency. I don't want to see, we can punish the 20-point guy, the fourth line plug. We can punish him, but first line franchise player, nope, sorry, we can't do anything. And I think that's where I want to see the consistency.
Yeah. Well, Slava Voinov was one of the top young defensemen in the NHL, and then when he got his suspension, he bolted to Russia. And I think it is a step in the right direction because, for example, with Voinov, he tried to come back to the NHL this offseason, and the NHL has continually ruled, no, you can't. You can't do that. And Austin Watson doesn't, he's from North America. He's not going to be bolting off to the Czech Republic or something like that to play this season. But at the same time, the NHL can't just let him play, let it slide because he's North American or whatever. Like, I do think that you are starting to see some consistency finally, and I hope it stays that way. But yeah, Austin Watson, we don't need to know the details of this. This is what unless it's somehow proven that it didn't happen, then that's an important detail. But
Rocket, I'm just going to read what Rocket put in the chat, if that's okay.
What's up?
I'm going to read what Rocket put in the chat because I know she's in Nashville. Watson's been in rehab. Last time he was in, he met a girl in rehab. They're having a baby. They got into a fight at a gas station. People called the cops. Bad optics. She didn't press charges. But there's enough witness statements that they decided to file charges. And I've heard 100 things, and I don't want to be like, oh, well, he just pushed her, because that's not cool. Like, you shouldn't push your pregnant girl. You shouldn't push anybody. So yeah, I think you look at these things, when the police gets called, generally someone's getting charged. That's just how it is now. But yeah, bad optics. So, but again, he pled no contest. So I mean, what do you do, right? I don't know. I want to see, but again, I just want to see this carried forward. If this is the penalty, I want to see it applied to the 50-point guy, the 70-point guy, the 100-point guy, the 20-point guy. I just want some consistency from that perspective. That simple. All right, so I'm going to end the show on that because we've been on probably a little over an hour and a half at this point. Usually try to keep it to an hour 30, minute 30. Yeah, that'd be a long show.
The Sharks acquired Erik Karlsson. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for watching and listening, guys. If you're listening on SoundCloud, of course, thanks as well. Wish we could have gotten you live, but that's okay as long as you're listening.
Absolutely. I just want to pimp a couple things that we've been doing. We put out a survey just because, again, obviously we want to make sure that this show is the best experience for you as well as it is for us. I think we try to do our best to do some things, but I always like your feedback because sometimes it opens our eyes to things that maybe we think we're doing well that we're not doing as well as we could. I'm not saying that. Okay. Yes, Skylar. The Toronto Maple Leafs are now easily, infinitesimally better in their division than the Ottawa Senators. And that is what this podcast relates to, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Back to what I was saying, we have a survey out. A bunch of people have taken it already. We've gotten some really good feedback that I've definitely, some of it I've definitely taken to heart, and I definitely want to apply it going forward to try and improve the show, obviously, not just for us, but for you, the audience, whether it's live, whether you're listening on the audio stream after the fact or anything like that. We want to make sure, obviously, you're getting the best experience out of this show because, frankly, there is a lot of Shark stuff to choose from. I will post the link. The links are on my you know what? If you go to the Teal Tinted Glasses Twitter at Teal Tinted Pod, you go at Ian Blogs Hockey. I'm sure there's been linked there 100 times. We also are trying to do a pyramid made by you guys, the audience. In the vein of the Steve Dangle prospect pyramid. We have a poll for that as well. It's really quick. You just go through and you say what tier you think each player is in. I'm not changing it because I don't think Francis Perron is anything, so I'm not going to change it. And Josh Norris is still on it. You can just put Guy if you want at this point. I don't really care. Probably won't include him on the final thing, but I'm going to leave that open for another week. Yeah, Balsers, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to put them on the thing. So whatever you put on there, it doesn't matter. I won't put them on the pyramid anyway. But next week, we're going to reveal our prospect pyramids. And we're also going to reveal the one that you guys made, that you guys collectively are going to make. And I think that's going to be a fun time. It's got to be, obviously, the guys listed are Sharks prospects that are actually Sharks prospects. So, if so, Sean Doogie's not on, and I apologize. He's not under contract. But yeah, so if you guys want to take the time to go through the survey to help us make a better show for you, because you guys have a lot of options, we want to make sure that you are choosing us at least first, if not second, if not third. Keep us in that rotation. We want to be in that rotation somewhere, and obviously we want to be number one. So definitely help us help you. Again, some of the feedback we've gotten so far has been really good. And there's definitely some things that I'm definitely going to try and change going forward. And it also just helps us let us know how you're listening to the show, how you're consuming the show, to make sure that we're getting it to the right places as quickly as possible. All right. Other than that, I think that's really it. Hockey Jerk with the pyramid.
You would not believe how difficult that was to download from Twitter, pull up on my computer, and oh my good Lord. But there you go. When I originally did it, I actually forgot to put in Josh Norris because he wasn't under contract, so therefore he did not appear on Cap Friendly. But now I think maybe subconsciously I knew he wouldn't be an option. So it feels like we're towards the end of our show here. Final thoughts? Are we cool with doing that?
That's what we're doing.
Cool. Okay.
Well, you know what? Just keep going with the final thoughts.
You know what? I would go another 6 hours if I had to. Okay. So final thoughts. Erik Karlsson is on the Sharks, and I was one of the very few people who back in June said, "Get over yourselves, people. Erik Karlsson doesn't fit on this team. It's not happening." And here we are. I've got the egg on my face. I put it out there. Now you all know I'm an idiot. we set a record tonight for live viewers. I believe
We
the highest I saw it was 41.
Oh, it was higher than that.
Higher than 41. There you go.
49.
Okay, 49. So, obviously we appreciate the support. If you want to, know when we're going live, follow at Teal Tinted Pod on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube, hit the notifications, all that stuff. As for me, you can follow me on Twitter at hockey_jerk. I'm not a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, Laurel, but I am campaigning to be the next captain of the Montreal Canadiens. So I would really appreciate all of your support. I think I could really help get that locker room into a positive environment. So if you would like the Hockey Jerk to be wearing the C for the Bleu Blanc et Rouge, please campaign for it.
I'm going to campaign for you to be the Senators because I want to see you do a video with Eugene Melnyk with a bag over your head or a shirt over your head or something. I don't know.
We're going to podcast more, but less. And then we're going to bring this guy in, but not too many guys in.
We're going to rebuild, but be competitive for the Stanley Cup.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm at Kevin Lacey 22 on most social media platforms. I did post my pyramid, already outdated pyramid, on my Twitter earlier today because I'll need to redo that with a couple of names, obviously. Real quick, because I haven't been on in a while. Thanks for having me on. I was in Florida. I'm going to wrap up something in the chat. Everyone was saying Kevin's looking a lot tanner these days. Did he get into Doug Wilson's tanning bed? No, I was in Florida. Actually, my tan's already going away, sadly, but it was a wonderful time. Also, I was helping Mike Hoffman move into his apartment with, no, I'm just playing there. I still can't believe that the Sharks traded for Mike Hoffman and Erik Karlsson in
the same summer. That's good.
Yeah,
you have a problem, Ottawa? We're going to fix it.
Yeah, we'll take both of them. And then, oh, wait, we can really get both of them? Let's get rid of Hoffman immediately. But I also want to congratulate my boy Victor Arvidsson for marrying his longtime girlfriend, Moa Norberg. So there you go. And I know there was something else that I always forget. But thanks for having me. Good night, Cuba.
All right, guys. I am Ian Blogs Hockey on the Twitter machine. I wrote an article today just kind of highlighting what the Sharks gave up in the Erik Karlsson trade, because I think we all know what we're getting. I think it was important to kind of like take a look at what we gave up and how that might affect the Sharks. So check that out on Teal Town USA. Probably going to have something else within the coming days based on, training camp starting, blah, 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 blah. Aside from that, though, obviously, again, thanks for listening. Check out my Twitter feed. I'm also, tomorrow when I post the show onto tealtintedglasses.com, I'll put all the links in that post as well. So, you can check it there. So if you're not like a Twitter user, check tealtintedglasses.com tomorrow. Find the post for today's show. We will have all the information, all the links to either the, our survey, our make a pyramid thing, everything else. It's all going to be there. Aside from that, at Teal Tinted Pod, at Ian Blogs Hockey, at It's Time for Bed. Good night. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all coming out. And we hope we can do this again with all 40 million of you next week. Ciao.